Okay then, good morning everyone. Welcome to our NAV Know webinar. Today we're going to be looking at importing bank statements. For those of you who don't know, I'm Adam and I'm part of the 4PS account management team. And I'm joined here this morning by Pauline, who many of you may know from previous webinars, training sessions and our support team. So I'll hand you over to Pauline in just a second and she'll take you through what we're going to be covering today. If you've been on any of our webinars before, you know how it works, but if not, we ask that you forward any questions directly to me once the webinar is over. It's just a way that we can save some time and make sure that we don't overrun. So I'll put my contact details up on the screen once the demonstration's over. Also, just so you know, this session is being recorded and will be available to rewatch on our website in the very near future. All in all, we're looking for today's webinar to last around 30 minutes. So if you're all set, Pauline, it's over to you.
Thank you, Adam, and welcome everyone. In today's webinar, we are going to be looking at how we import our bank statement. When we download our statement from our bank, we have to save it in a CSV format, separated variable. All banks can use different formats, of course, for their downloaded statements, and therefore we have to tell NAV what that format is. This is done through something called Data Exchange Definition Page, and it's within here that we tell NAV what programming features to use, detail to NAV the format and layout of the file that we'll be uploading into NAV, and this is done in the column and line definitions fast tab. We will then go to the bank card itself and point the bank to the data definition page that is to be used for this specific bank account. Once completed, we'll go to the bank reconciliation and, using the bank import function, upload our statement, which will be in that CSV file format, into the bank rec itself, and carry out the matching of those downloaded transactions to our bank account ledger entries. After the lines are matched, we will, as we do in any reconciliation, print out our bank account reconciliation report. So let's go and have a look at that in the system. Our first port of call is the data definition page, but just before we do that, I would just like to show you the layout of the download that I have set up. It is a very simple example. As I said earlier, all bank accounts will have different formats, but the setup when we do it within NAV will be exactly the same. And also, once we have done our download, we have to save that Excel spreadsheet in the CSV format. So just for those that may not be aware of how to do that, we just do our file and save as. And the important bit here is this save as type field. So here we're using just that simple CSV, delimited even format. So once we've done that, and I'll just get rid of that because otherwise I won't be able to import it. So that data definition page. So we can search for our data exchange definitions here. And you'll notice that there are a list of different definitions that we can create for the different functions within NAV and of course for the different banks that we might want to download our statements from. In this case, I'm using this one here, this statement import, and once we have set it up, then these fields get populated on a line. So to get to that setup, we can go to the edit function. Within our general fast tab, we, as normal as we do in NAV, we give it a code, we give it a description, and then there's some information that we have to impart on NAV. What type of file are we going, and we're using in this case a variable text because we're using that comma-separated variable file format. What type of exchange definition are we setting up, and there's several there, and of course we're using the bank statement import. The file encoding is always Windows, and the column separator, there are several, but as I explained earlier, we're using the CSV, so it is the comma separated. Dependent on what you actually get down from your bank download, you can specify if you have a header sitting on the top of your file or not. I have it in my file, as you probably noticed. And then we come into the definitions themselves. First of all, we need to populate our column definitions, fast tab here. And simply all we do is we put in a line for each of the columns on our spreadsheet. So in my column 1, I had a field and I'm calling it date. So this is just a text input field here. I choose what type of data type it is, and there are several, and I'll just show you on that bottom line there so you can see them a bit more clearly. We have text, date, decimal, and date and time. When we're using a date field, we have to tell it, because of course NAV is an international product, so we have to tell it the date format, and for us here in GB, we have to use the format where it's lowercase dd / uppercase mm / lowercase YYY. If you don't do that, then when you try to upload your file, you will get some errors. Also, another thing that we must do is actually put in this data formatting culture, and the format for all of us is EN in lowercase, hyphen, and then GB in uppercase. Because we're using variable text, we don't have to worry about populating the length. We can put them in on text fields if we want to, just so we can have a reference there. You'll notice our text fields, there's nothing else that we need to add there. So for our document number, account number, and description, which are all the columns on my spreadsheet, we don't have to add anything other than just specify that they are actually text fields. But on our amount field, it is denoted as being a data type of decimal. And again, we have to just specify that date formatting culture. So our column definitions fast tab tells Navision what the structure is of the file that we're going to be importing. We then have to tell Navision which of those columns we're actually going to be using. And we do that in the lines definition fast tab. We tell it what type of line type it is. There's detail, header, or footer. Most of you will be only having to specify that you have a header, because that's generally the format of the file that comes across. We give it a code and a name. They are just, again, text fields, so you can call them whatever is meaningful. And then we specify, out of the number of columns that are coming in, how many we actually want to bring through to our bank reconciliation itself. Now, as I say, this is a very simple file structure that I've done here just to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. But for example, NatWest has got a total of 18 columns that you download, and of course we don't need all of those columns within NAV, but we would have to detail those 18 columns here. But then when we come up to our line definitions, then we may only be picking up 3, 4, or 5, depending on what fields we want to bring across. So, columns for what's on the spreadsheet, line definitions are telling NAV which of those columns we're going to use. So I've said here I just want to use 3 out of my 5 columns. And then we have to say what 3 columns do we want to use. And we do that through the field mapping section here. We have to specify the table ID, and we're using the bank reconciliation line, i.e. where we're going to be importing this data to. So that is table 274. We can give it a name if we want to as well. And the only other thing we need to specify is the mapping code unit, which is 1248. So that's all that needs to happen on that general fast tab of the lines field mapping page. Coming down to the field mapping itself, we select which column from our columns listed here that we want to use, and then within this field here, we say which of the NAV fields, i.e. which on the table fields that we're going to be using. The table field automatically brings in the field caption for us, and you can see that it is non-editable. Just to show you how simple it is to add a line, there is a document number here that I could use, so I'll just pretend that I want to put that in. So I'm just going to put in a new line. I'm going to change that to my column number 2, which is my document number, and then within the field I will select the appropriate field. In this case it's document number, and now I've added that document number field. The reason I haven't added it in the first place is because that document number on our spreadsheet will be the reference on our statement, which won't actually tie up to the NAV invoice number or journal number or whatever it is. So it's really not particularly meaningful. So I just wanted to show you how easy it is to select that field mapping. So I'm just going to remove that again and say OK. So we have set up our columns from our spreadsheet, the lines that we're going to be using within Navision, and the field mapping within that, mapping those fields from our spreadsheet to the NAV fields. So that's all that needs to be done on our data definition. We have to though also specify on the bank account which of those data definitions we're going to be using. I'm using the WWB GBP bank account, so I'll just view that and show you on our transfer fast tab, where we pick up that bank statement input format. And again, just to show you how that is done, just drill down in there, go to advanced, and then that gives me a list. Now you'll notice my list isn't as large as the list when we went into those data definitions in the first place, and that is because we are in a bank account card, we are importing, and therefore it has filtered to those entries that are relevant for bank import. There's my bank import line that we were looking at earlier. We have a processing unit here which needs to be populated with 1270. We then pick up the definition itself. So again, if I come down here, we've got that list, and then we just tick this box to say preserve non-Latin characters. So that's our bank account card set up. Of course, within our bank account, for us to do our statement, we should have our last statement number that's going to be used, and our balance that will be coming forward to our bank rec itself. So we have all that set up, so I'll close that down now, and we go to the bank rec itself. So bank account reconciliations, and just the first thing to point out here, this is a list of all the open bank recs, i.e. a bank rec has been started but not posted. So don't forget, if you ever see your bank account that you want to reconcile this time in this list, please don't create a new bank rec for that bank account, because that will give you problems going forward, because there will be entries on one bank rec and not on the other, and things will go quite awry. So if you do see that bank rec, and I'm doing my GBP account here, then just go to the edit, and then those details are brought through for you. I've already populated my statement date, and my balance has come through from my bank card from my last reconciliation, and my statement end balance. So I've downloaded that spreadsheet, and at the end of that statement I've got my balance to what I'm going to reconcile to. So I've already populated that. You'll notice that we have the blank side. On the left hand side, these are the bank statement lines. So these are the lines that we are going to reconcile, and we will either do that manually through the suggest lines function here, or we will do it through the import, which we'll be doing shortly. Our right hand side, however, shows all of the bank ledger entries that are open. And we know that, we can see we have our open tick box here. So all the entries that could actually be reconciled. So to import our statement, we simply go to the import bank statement on our home ribbon. And we pick up the file that we have downloaded. And it must be, as I say, that CSV file. So I will just say open there. And the lines come through from that spreadsheet. So at this point in time, I can, if I want to, manually apply my entries from my downloaded statement entries to my bank account ledger entries. And you do that simply by clicking on the one entry on the left hand side, then going to the entry on the right hand side, and then just do the match manually. When you do complete that matching, the line will actually go into green so that you can see quite clearly that it has been matched. And you'll notice that that difference here has now been blanked out because we have now applied that value. So at this point I can keep going down, but of course we don't really want to do that. I actually want to show you how you can do it automatically. So on the match automatically icon, we get a little dialog box and it says transaction date tolerance in days. And what that is asking you to say is, because when we post something in NAV, we will give it a particular posting date. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be the same date within our bank account when we download our statement. So here you're allowed to specify how many days sort of tolerance. So 3 might be the average sort of tolerance, and this is used when NAV is trying to match those entries. Now the actual entries themselves will be matched on these 3 priorities basically. The statement amount, if they are identical, it will be classed as a match. The description, payer information and transaction information, it's unlikely that those will ever tie up, but it is something that NAV will use to try and match together. And the 3rd priority is that transaction date, and that is why we have that option to put in that tolerance to say, okay, well, if the statement amount matches and the date is within, and in my case I put 3 days to match, then class that as a match. So if I just minimize that now, so I'm going to do my 3 days and I will say OK. And it tells me that I've got 6 reconciliation lines out of the 8 that have been matched. So when I say OK, we can see on the left hand side it is highlighted in the green to say which entries on the right it has matched to, and those differences have all gone across to our applied amounts. But of course, when we download our statement, we often get our bank charges coming through and interest or whatever else. And in this case, because they are purely bank details, rather than if it was a payment from a customer or from a check or direct debit going through against our vendor, that would be different. We would need to make those entries through our cash receipt journal and payment journal in the normal way. But because they are just purely bank charges, in this situation I can actually use the transfer to general journal option. And what this does, it will pick up any lines where there is a difference and put those entries into a journal for me. So I'm just going to quickly show you that option. Within this function, we have to specify which journal template and journal batch that we're going to use, and we can say OK to that, and it very nicely opens up my journal for me. I just get rid of that line on the top there because that's not from my bank rec. So here are my two entries. It's brought through the posting date, it's brought through the balance account, i.e. the bank account, and the values and the descriptions. We haven't got a document number, and that is purely because on my batch I don't have a number series set up. So I might want to just put in here July 19 we are, and I'll just F8 that from there. The only thing that NAV doesn't know is which GL account to use for those particular entries. So I'm just going to select my bank charges here and my interest charge account for my second line. And now I can just simply post my journal and close my journal down. So now I have in my bank account ledger entries, I have those two new entries relating to those bank charges that we just posted through that journal. And again, I can either apply manually or match manually, but in this case I'll just do my automatic again. I can put my 1 day or I can put 0 days, it will still take it. And now I've got my 8 out of my 8 being reconciled. So now all I have to worry about, all my lines are applied. All I have to worry about is that my total balance as far as NAV is concerned is the same as my statement end balance, and of course if it isn't, then something is awry and I have to investigate why that is. But as it is correct, I'm ready to post this. However, I will just print up that bank account recon statement, and if for those that are existing users, this is the only report where you can see what you haven't reconciled on this run or on this reconciliation. It auto populates the statement ending date for me based on the statement date on my reconciliation. So I will just do preview so we can all see it on the screen. Of course you would print this up and probably attach it to your statement that you've downloaded. So in here we can see what the statement end balance is, all the outstanding payments that haven't been reconciled, and all the outstanding receipts that we're not reconciling this time. And of course we would tie that up to our general ledger GL account as well. So once we're happy that everything has gone through as it should, we can get rid of that screen, and then the next thing to do is just to post our reconciliation. Okay, so that bank rec has now gone, and I'm sorry to say that we have now come to the end of this session, in which we've had a look at how we can import our bank statement, how we can set up the rules in our data definition page for the line and column definitions of the file format that's coming in. We've had a look at our bank account cards where we select which of the definitions that we're going to be using for that import. And we've done the bank reconciliation itself and even utilised entries that are on the statement that weren't on NAV through the transfer to general journal area. We've then had a look at that print bank account reconciliation report so that we can see all those entries that we haven't gone through this time. So I do hope that you've enjoyed today, and I'll say bye for now and look forward to seeing you on our next NAV Know How session. So I'll now hand you back to Adam.
Thank you very much, Pauline. I hope you all found that interesting and useful. So if you do have any questions or would like to know more, please take a note of our contact details on the screen now. feel free to give me a call or drop me an email and I'll be happy to help you out. For those of you who were at our customer day earlier this week, you'll know that I briefly touched on Jet Budgets, which is a new offering from Jet Reports designed to improve your budgeting capabilities in NAV. We're looking to run a webinar demo on this in the first week of December, and as it's a new product, Jet are actually offering 50% off Jet Budgets up until just before Christmas. So if it's something that sounds interesting to you, please do join us for that. We're hoping to have the date confirmed over the next week or so. And we're also running a 4PS Know How webinar next week where we'll be looking at managing approvals. Once again, thank you for being with us this morning. Have a great day and we'll see you very soon. Cheers.